news, everyone.
I'm back, baby.
It's Jake Ciely.
I'm great. Everybody else sucks.
Oh,
no. It's every nightmare I've ever had.
Excuse me?
It's time to check the link.
Pretty crazy, huh? But it doesn't matter because none of this has anything to do with the show.
You know what? You just made the list.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in football.
Sure, we talk about it all the time. Really? No.
What is up, you ducks? It is All in Football on FTN. If you want to check out Jeff Ratcliffe and all the good stuff over at FTN, code ALLIN, get you 20% off. And if you want to go to The Athletic, theathletic.com/besttv, all capitals, gets you that first free month, where you can see the final piece of my 4-part series of the next breakout blank. This week was tight ends as we try to find the next Dalton Schultz. So make sure you check that over there. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, all covered. It's been a while since we've talked to Jeff. He's a traveling man right now, Chicago, Detroit, all over the place. How have things been for you, Jeff? Let me ask you this way. Are you getting any drafts in this month, or are you just focused on the travels?
A little bit. I'm also focused on this pretty fresh wallpaper in the Airbnb that we have behind us here. Don't stare at that too hard. Shapes will come out, pictures will come out in this thing. No, yeah, you have to. You have to keep your finger on the pulse of all the drafts. So, yeah, I'm doing my best there. I'm doing my best to get everything ramped up for July because it's about to get crazy.
It is about to get crazy. You said best twice, Jeff, so let me ask you one more best. Are you in the best shape of your life?
I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm light years ahead of where I was last year. I'm a leader. Let's see what else.
Are you taking first team reps?
This offense is so fresh this year. Like what are there was one I just saw today and I forgot that it was a trope. Oh man, it'll come to me. But yeah, best shape of my life.
Yeah, that's why I threw in the one running with the first team. So always running with the first team as well.
Yeah.
You know what? So today, I don't know, it comes in barely. I don't know if we'll see the name once I spin it, but it is the spinning wheel of football teams to decide which teams we talk about today. Because instead of being like, let's do divisions, let's do alphabetically, let's do what, I figured I'd let the wheel decide. It'd just be fun. But before we get to that, Jeff, I have one player that I do want to talk about because he is not in the best shape of his life. He is chunky monkey out there right now. But this player showed up overweight, quote unquote, last year and cut his weight during the summer, as he said he's done the entire part of his career. That's Leonard Fournette. Are you concerned at all that he showed up overweight to Buccaneers camp?
I love that he showed up overweight because I want people to be down on him. I mean, when are we going to learn? This is the same narrative. Go back to the combine. He was too heavy at the combine. It's the same narrative over and over and over again. Last year, what was the narrative? Let's find something to talk down on Fournette. Oh, yeah, Ronald Jones, because that's ever going to happen. Please, just think that way. Like, Jake, I'm firmly on this. My advice to people out there is if you're in a league with somebody and they have a bad take, don't argue with them. Just let them have the bad take.
Do it.
Use that to your advantage. Don't argue with them. And it's a bad take. Fournette's going to be just fine.
Yeah, there's we're doing our magazine mock right now at The Athletic, and I have the 6th pick of the 3rd round. Leonard Fournette almost made it to me. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, let him fall. And he almost made it. To give you an idea, I mean, if you're mid to late 2nd round, I'm taking that pick, aren't you?
Depends on who I picked in the 1st round.
Of course.
If I went wide receiver, especially the 1st round, I would definitely like that. But yeah, it's tough to pass it up. I think people just want to continually doubt. And what does he have to do? He had 82 touches in the 2020 playoffs. People wanted to doubt it. Last year, he goes out and is, a rock solid, no matter what your format is, top 10, borderline top 5 fantasy running back in most formats as well. I don't know what else he has to do. I really don't.
Neither do I. Yeah, Jiggles, all in cliches. You should know by now, Jeff, more than even me, and I love to crap all over cliches. Jeff takes it to another place. This is why we're so great together. What's up, Albert? Always loyal to the show. All right, so Jeff, first spin. Here we go. All 32 teams are on here. Our first spin. Let's see if you can actually see. Yeah, you can. It is the Packers. What better team? Oh, this is glorious. It's almost like I should just put 32 Packers. This is terrific because we have Alan Lazard news. We have Sammy Watkins news. We have news coming out of the woodwork for what's going on with the Packers right now. So let's talk wide receivers right off the gate here. There's talk Sammy Watkins. This is finally Sammy Watkins, if he stays healthy, can finally be what he was those 1 or 2 good seasons that he had. There is Allen Lazard could be the answer. I saw somebody tweet this yesterday, Jeff. What if Allen Lazard is this year's Adam Thielen from 2017, when Adam Thielen finally broke out and people were just kind of not really knowing how good he could be? So before we get further down the depth chart with the rookies and the other pieces, Sammy Watkins, Allen Lazard, or is it somebody else that should be, in your opinion, the number one? Or is it possibly nobody and it's just a complete mess every single week out there? As in, we can't predict who should be the most reliable.
I mean, I think we have to address the elephant in the room first and foremost. The elephant in the room is Allen Lazard is not under contract. He was tendered, second-round tender. He's trying to get more money, rightfully so. I mean, we just saw this actually, the very same thing play out with Ernest Johnson for the Cleveland Browns, and they ended up getting something done because Johnson wasn't under contract until last week. I would assume they're going to have to get Lazard under contract here, but I mean, I just don't think there is going to be consistency here. There isn't going to be somebody who's going to fill the shoes of Davante Adams. I mean, I like the rookies who they drafted, but the rookies who they drafted are only now getting their first glimpse of Aaron Rodgers and vice versa. We know that Rodgers wants you to be on the same page with him. We saw Davante Adams, the man himself, who widely is regarded as, if he's not the number one receiver in the NFL, he's right in that conversation. In his first couple seasons, struggle mightily with Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's just going to be a bumpy ride overall for these wide receivers. And that tends to be very frustrating for fantasy folks because you're not going to get the consistency you're looking for.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. As Bub says, I always say, and cliche, or made this into a cliche a couple of years ago to throw another cliche out there. But you know what? Can it be a cliche if I'm one of the only people who uses it? But buy the cake, not the icing. There you go. I always say buy the quarterback if you're invested in a team. Don't try to figure out the icing. As good as it might taste, and you get a little lick of it, but you don't want only the icing. You don't want only trying to figure out who's it going to be every single week. So let me ask you this follow-up question, Jeff. Because Lazard himself isn't even costing you much. Watkins is costing you nothing. On top of it, as you completely, you've said many times, even when we were talking about during the draft, Romeo Doubs cost you nothing. The only person that's costing you anything right now is actually rookie Christian Watson going the highest, but he's not even barely going inside the top 50 of wide receivers. So knowing that, who would be the one that you would take the gamble on right now?
I probably would still go Watson. I don't.
You would?
Yeah, I don't know if I honestly don't know if Sammy Watkins makes the team. I really don't.
Right,
that's another offseason trope. Like, this player has regained the fountain of youth. He's back to the player he was earlier in his career. Watkins is never going to be that player again. He was so electric in Buffalo.
Wiggy.
Before the injury, though, before the foot, but he's never regained that. He's become almost a possession receiver at this point in his career. I think, I look for the kid who has the most upside. You got the downfield presence. Again, it's going to be an incredibly bumpy ride for Christian Watson, but he's also a player that they prioritize in the draft. They package 2 picks, 2 second-round picks to move up to get him. Aaron Rodgers has had a little bit of a say here at the end of his career and that sort of thing too. So, handpicking this guy and really what I'm looking for is not replacing Adams. Like, if Watson can legitimately get close to replacing Marquez Valdez-Scantling, then he's probably going to be the best of the bunch.
Let me ask you this. Including Christian Watson, I think I know the answer, but I'm asking anyway, because this is one of those, we talk about bench and why draft these kind of players, but there's a chance he's the number one for his new team. Any Packers wide receiver, Watson included, or Devontae Parker?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think I would lean Watson for ceiling. That's really all it is, though. It's a swing for the fences. But it's close with Parker. Parker's an interesting name. I just don't think you get that. You're not going to get that ceiling with him. He has a touchdown ceiling, but you're not going to get any big plays with Devontae
Well,
Parker.
I don't know if you heard this, Jeff, but Mac Jones is making all the throws today.
There you go.
Is that the one you were trying to think of? He's making all the throws.
No, it wasn't. I said it on the Sirius XM show today, and I don't remember what it was. It'll come to me eventually. But yeah,
what is all the throws anyway?
all of them. Just all of the throws.
All of them. Including the Mark Rippon back down to the ground 5 feet in front of the wide receiver. Does that include? Is that all the throws?
I guess so.
Sailing at 20 yards over their head, all the throws?
Yeah, with whoever is their offensive coordinator and whatever offense they're running. But Mac Jones is apparently he lost some weight, so there's that.
Oh, okay. Oh, but wait, so he didn't put on 5 pounds of muscle though, Jeff. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
So
best shape of his life.
net even there. All right, so let's talk about this backfield. Aaron Jones, first 2 years, well, not first 2 years, the first 2 years of fantasy greatness before last year. He was still good last year, but the 2 years before that was great. Top 10. Very touchdown reliant. Only ran for about 1,000 yards, but heavy use in the passing game, as has been his career. When Davante Adams has been out, so he's not on the team anymore, Adams has seen an uptick, but we also saw that counteracted a little bit last year with A.J. Dillon being more involved. It's pushing more towards pretty much the Broncos of last year is where these Packers have started using them. That being said, is Aaron Jones still an RB1 because just like Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, they were pushing RB1 status and Aaron Jones has a little bit more of a gap over Dillon? Or are we looking at the fact that now they're both potentially in the RB2 range and this is going to be even a bigger share as they take more workload off of Aaron Jones? Which way do you lean with those guys?
I lean the latter, and current drafters are not leaning that direction. They are drafting Jones inside the top 10 running backs right now. I'm just not there. Trends tend to continue in the NFL, and it's trending towards that timeshare / committee. I know you're stickler for the timeshare. Let's call it that.
Thanks, Scott Angle, for that one.
What's that?
I said, you can thank Scott Angle from that one. It was one of the very, very first years in this industry back in 2010. I was writing, and he goes, committee has to be 3 or more. Timeshare is 2. Remember that for your career. So that 2010 has stuck with me since then.
Here's a lesson, kid. Remember this for your career. And honestly, at his price right now, Aaron Jones is just too expensive for me. I would rather have, honestly,
Leonard Fournette.
I would rather have Cam Akers, who's going significantly later, and I think people are sleeping on Cam Akers right now.
Yeah, full round and 4 picks later than Aaron Jones in this draft. So to give you an idea there. All right, before we move on to a new spin and see the new team, any interest in Robert Tonyan?
No.
Okay,
we already saw it happen. So what do you have? 52 catches on 59 targets in his breakout year? Like that efficiency was
all those touchdowns.
Charts.
Yes. Oh, you know what? I do have one more question. How much? Barkley. Hey, by the way, Barkley, come here. It's Barkley's birthday today. She's 3 years old today.
There you go. Happy birthday, Barkley.
Happy birthday, Barkley. Here, he can get a treat, even though you're barking at the front door, which she never used to do. I don't know if everybody remembers, the very first year I had her, she never used to bark, and that was the joke, is the fact that she's called Barkley and never bark. But anyway, there you go, Barkley. Okay. Aaron Rodgers, how much are you downgrading him because of no Davante Adams and the fact that I'll pose it this way for you. Is he still top 5 like he was, or is he now in the conversation of Brady, Prescott, Russ Wilson, Stafford, those kind of names now?
Well, yeah, the last 2 names especially, he's in that conversation. Now, as far as skill, like, the non-fantasy football people out there, of course he's still top 5 in the NFL. But the challenge that we're going to run into with him is, he had off-the-charts touchdown efficiency with Davante Adams, and that is now gone. And Rodgers has never been a heavy yardage guy. He's a 4,300 type yard guy in any given season. So that's my major concern. Obviously, he doesn't add much as a runner as well. But by the same token, if this all pans out the right way, and you're in 1 quarterback leagues and you like to do the approach that I do where I draft like a safer option and then I swing for the fences like Trey Lance or maybe it's Tua or somebody like that, Justin Fields this year, Aaron Rodgers could make it to the late rounds. And I don't mind that whatsoever because the directionality in football is it flows from the quarterback to the receivers, not the other way around. So Rodgers is still going to be out there and he is more than capable of making his receivers better.
By the cake, not the icing. So that draft I'm talking about, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks off the board. Aaron Rodgers is yet to come off the board. Prescott, Brady, Wilson, Stafford, and Rodgers, all those guys are still right there to give you an idea. Okay, time to spin the wheel again. Let's see what team we
No
can
whammy.
get.
No whammy.
No way. Rams. They're gonna have
we
nothing
go.
good left after this show. Right? There we go. Hey, you brought him up. It's almost. Is this thing listening?
It is.
Because let's talk Cam Akers in this backfield. Good God.
Is that produced by Amazon? Is it listening?
I will tell you one thing as a sidebar, Jeff, to prove that there has to be, because so everybody knows on Instagram, if you go to the search and it often shows like things you look at on Instagram, and I always go to the search to look at dog stuff, and then it's dogs and people crashing and failing like on bikes and skateboards and all that type of stuff. Those are the main things I look at. I went to my chiropractor and said, this has really been bothering me. I brought a picture of how I sit at my desk. Am I potentially sitting wrong? And she immediately goes to me. She goes, you have forward head lean. And then she's like, move your monitor up so you're looking more like this instead of kind of like this. I'm not kidding you. On Instagram that afternoon, one of the posts on the random search was how to prevent forward head lean. No joke. So I'm just saying. Like, and it has nothing to do with crashing or failing or dogs. So anyway, as it's continuing to listen and gave us Cam Akers, you're already on board. So for everybody out there that might be hesitant after watching what happened in the playoffs, because he came back in an ungodly amount of time, which we've never seen before off that kind of injury with the Achilles, but he only averaged about 2 yards per carry. I think it was 1.9. But he had some work in the passing game. But Darrell Henderson right now nursing his own injury. Kyron Williams, who they drafted, is dealing with his own injury. This entire backfield is hurt right now except for Jake Funk. But tell everybody why they should be on with Cam Akers, because I'm with you. He was one of my breakout running backs near the top. It was actually Dobbins and Akers up there.
Yeah. I think we have to go back to our friend Leonard Fournette. In the 2020 playoffs, he had 82 touches in 4 games. And yet last year in fantasy drafts, people didn't want to draft him because, well, they created their narrative of Ronald Jones, and he ended up being a massive value, like 8th, 9th round ADP. I remember being at the
in
flex.
front of Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Yeah, exactly. And I remember being at the Flex League draft, and Leonard Fournette was the second running back that I drafted, and it was like the 9th round or whatever. And you're like, do you feel okay with that? And I was like, well, I mean, he's got an opportunity, and he was coming off all the work in the playoffs. So, and now granted, you're not going to hit home runs on all of those, and cool, toot my own horn. But that's sort of the point, though, is that the team showed us they were willing to use him as a 3-down guy at the most important time of the year. Last year in the 2021 playoffs, in 4 games, Cam Akers had 76 touches. I don't care about the efficiency. I care about the volume. Then you mentioned the backfield behind. Darrell Henderson's going to get hurt 6 times this season. Kyron Williams, it sucks. It's a broken foot. He'll be back hopefully by round about the start of camp. But Kyron Williams is not a guy who I'm too intimidated by. Jake Funk is a great athlete. He still needs to learn the position. There's no competition for touches for Cam Akers. And he's on one of the best offenses in the NFL. But so to me, it's just not computing. Like, why are we not seeing that all the opportunity and the fact that McVay historically has also given these running backs who are his lead backs a massive workload? Heck, he even gave Sony Michel a massive workload last year. So for me, it's a no-brainer. And I do love the fact that he's not going as a top 12 back, but he's going to get top 12 back volume.
Could not agree with you more. I love some Cam Akers. I have so far, as we've been drafting, a lot of Dobbins and Akers. We've seen a lot of the talk of the Ravens getting back. And you say, like, what teams tell you. I think the way that the Ravens addressed this offseason and then drafting Tyler Batty was 7th round, 6th round? It was at the end of the draft.
Yeah, it was late day 3.
They're just basically looking for Justice Hill again. And they're telling us they're confident that Dobbins and Edwards are going to be okay. So that's a sidebar. We'll hopefully get to that team at some point because it blocks out the teams we haven't gotten to. Let's talk about the wide receivers. I'm going to give you something. So I went on Kyle Yates' podcast, and I did my first blast of rankings before my projections. I actually just finished my projections last week, and I told them I would come back to them because my initial gut of when I was going through my rankings and saying, you know what, I would take this wide receiver versus this wide receiver, and that's how I do my initial gut to kind of work through my projections and come back around. My initial one had Allen Robinson in the 20s. When I ran my projections, Allen Robinson checked in as wide receiver 18. Mm-hmm. Kyle Yates was very happy about that because he was very angry when I had him in the 20s. And every reason he was right about, because I've loved Aaron Robinson. You've loved Aaron Robinson. Last year, we know, was a miserable situation, a miserable offense. Thankfully, Nagy's gone, but they didn't help Justin Fields too much. But Allen Robinson, 18. Just right, too low, or too high?
I think it's a tick too high.
Okay.
And it's not that I don't like him. I mean, if I'm positioning him at 18, then I'm saying probably he's my second wide receiver if I draft him, as opposed to right now somebody more like Brandon Cooks is who I have at 18, and I feel a little bit better about that, him being the de facto clear number one without competition for targets in that offense, as opposed to playing alongside Cooper Kupp. Now, granted, there's plenty of meat on the bone. But Robinson's going to be in a unique situation where he isn't the top target. This is the first time, I mean, even go back to his college days where that's really going to be the case. I mean, maybe year one in Jacksonville, but even then. So that's where I'm a little hesitant. But I thought I was bullish on Allen Robinson, and I guess I'm not. Up at 28, I thought that was high. At 18, that's pretty aggressive. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like it. It feels a little too high for me.
So that's funny. I think I had him around 26 or somewhere right now before the project. Actually, he's 19. I lied by one spot. 19. Right behind him, DJ Moore and Brandon Cooks, for reference. To give you an idea, you do projections. Everybody, well, at our level. Can I say it that way, Jeff? Everybody at our range does projections. I know. Here's where he checks in projections-wise that puts him at 19 in mine. 80 receptions, 1,043 yards, and 7.5 touchdowns, so 7 or 8. Do you think those are reasonable, or do you think there's an area of those where, like, maybe the touchdowns are too high, the receptions are or is it just the fact of, like, my projections might be overall a little bit more conservative than yours are, which means Allen Robinson could have the same numbers and still rank 28 in yours?
Yeah. What is that, like 130 some targets, something like that?
You are over by 10, 120. So
it's
80
fairly
out of 120.
efficient on those. But granted, I mean, I guess it really depends on the target depth as well.
67%.
Yeah. Maybe that's where we're a little different. I think my efficiency is lower. Yeah. I think that's it. And that's within the range for sure. And maybe the challenge that I'm having right now with efficiency is we have no sample size with him with a capable quarterback, like ever. Absolutely
for his
ever.
Career.
Hackenberg was his college quarterback. So I guess now and if you're watching right now, I think this is just a great conversation to be listening in on, because when we rank, a lot of folks out there who are casual players, who are even players who would watch this show in June, take that ranking as gospel. Okay, Jake has him at 19, therefore he has to be 19. Ratcliffe has him at 28, and then, they disagree, and Ratcliffe's so low on him, and Jake's so high on him. But the reality is both of those rankings are very much within his expected range. And I would say, Jake, it's very fair to argue that, like, his ceiling is pretty high in this offense, and I don't think his floor is particularly that low. The only thing that would derail him is if he actually got hurt. I think that's pretty interesting. You tweak the efficiency a little bit, and that bumps him up.
It does, and that's, we know this as well too. Is the biggest thing. You go back, just look the past 2 years at wide receiver, and then if you see my projections, your projections, the difference between wide receiver 18 and 28 might be fewer than a point per game over the entire season. Like, that's how narrow that might. Yes, Bubs, that is pipe bomb. Nobody is on our level on this show. We've proven that. We were the number one and number two. You cannot get a more accurate show than what we were doing right now. So nobody is on our level. Everybody, all the guys in the back and all the women in the back, not on our level. Jeff and I are at the top.
For this
joking.
year.
A little too, tongue-in-cheek there. So let's talk one more thing, because we know Cooper Kupp, we know Matthew Stafford, we've done Cam Akers. So are we done with Tyler Higbee being a thing? Can we just finally stop and say, like, enough? It's just not going to happen.
I mean, he's coming back from an injury. They actually have a really deep tight end room now.
Right?
I mean, it's pretty – they're set up. And you have to figure, okay, so what is the best case scenario in terms of targets for Tyler Higbee? Because Kupp is going to get his, Robinson's going to get his. Van Jefferson's solid, solid number 3 for sure. So are you tied
I'm
with
at
him in
80.
targets?
Yeah, I'm 80 just behind Jefferson. Like I couldn't even get him over 80, and that's
not enough.
No, that's not because like you said, don't forget Jacob Harris moved. Not you, but people out there. Jacob Harris was the one that moved to tight end that they drafted. Bryson Hopkins, Blanton, as you mentioned, who should. I mean, that entire crew, all of them could get. Those three could all get 15 to 25 targets each, potentially more if Higbee even takes a further step back.
Yeah, it's true. It's 100% true.
I agree with Brad Trailer, by the way. Van Jefferson, way too cheap in best ball right now.
Best ball, yes.
Way.
He's a definite best ball guy. He's not somebody who I would be drafting in redraft this year because you're getting the third piece of this offense. It really is just going to set you up for frustration. The big weeks that you're going to get in best ball because you don't have to worry about starting him, you're going to have him on your bench. And then the next week in redraft, when you start him, he's not going to have a big week. So, yeah, those are the type of guys that are tailor-made for best ball.
So do you want to throw out another name to see if this thing is really listening to us? Just a random name.
Jalen Hurts.
All right, let's see if we get the Eagles. Let's see as it scrolls. No, we got the Browns. All right, there's too much going on with the Browns. I was going to say, no, we're now we're re-spinning because there's too much going on with that one.
I read the New York Times article. Oof.
Steelers. All right,
okay.
This is an interesting one. And so, actually, we can go back a couple weeks. The first one, best shape of life. It's not just best shape of life, Jeff. It's, as I've coined them, the quads of Adonis, a Najee Harris out there. And Najee Harris putting on 14 pounds, and everybody concerned about that because is it too heavy now? Is he going to be playing slower? Najee Harris, I know I see your smile for everybody that's just listening. It's all tongue-in-cheek. We don't listen to all that as we started the show with, if you just tuned in now. So then here's how I'm going to ask you the question about Najee Harris. First player off the board, Jonathan Taylor. Is there a conversation for Najee Harris at number 2?
I guess there is. I wouldn't have him there. I think the more viable conversation would be Cooper Kupp at number 2. And that's a really interesting one. That's where he's going in underdog ADP right now for best ball. So I guess if you really were worried about an older Derrick Henry and an oft-injured Christian McCaffrey, and you didn't want to deal with Dalvin Cook in a new offense, and you were worried about volume for Austin Eckler, I mean, the guys who I technically have ahead of him, well, him and Cook I've been back and forth all summer. Okay. But not even that we're at summer, but the off season. The one thing that did come out today, and I don't know if this was, I haven't looked on like the major fantasy news sites here since this morning, but it was out there. I think Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, they were talking about reducing the snap share and a little bit of the workload. So there's going to be downs, according to Harris, that he's coming off the field, certain particular situations where he's going to come off the field, where last year he did not. He was on the field more than any running back. He obviously had almost he was within an earshot of 400 touches last year. So that's one thing to note. I don't think they really have the personnel to spell him that much. It does actually remind me of McCaffrey's situation where there's just nobody behind him. But I guess he could, if you really felt strongly that, that volume is going to repeat, that you're worried about the injuries and the other concerns for those older running backs, then yeah, I mean, I'm not going to talk anybody out of that because he's in that tier.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm with you in the fact that for who? We're pulling him off the field for Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland. Really, that's what we're doing here. So here's where I'll follow up with this is say sneak preview for anybody that does get the Athletic magazine. The mock draft, Renee Miller had the first pick. She took Najee Harris.
Wow.
She took Najee Harris for this argument, and this is the argument I'll make for her, which she'll go more in depth, so I'm doing the snapshot version. It's what you just said about Christian McCaffrey, is that Jonathan Taylor does already come off the field, and when they've been talking up Nyheim Hines, getting back to Nyheim Hines, where her point was 380-plus touches for Najee Harris is basically written in stone if you look at that team, whereas Jonathan Taylor could be 320, still end up the number 1 depending on what they do per touch and touchdowns, but that was her point, what you just said, volume. So volume-wise, where's it coming from? Because that's the question now. They drafted Kenny Pickens in the first round, but every report, Jeff, this past week and a half, depending on when you're listening to this, we're recording on June 7th or 8th? June 8th. I should know that. It's Barkley's birthday. June 8th. Barkley's birthday. Every report's been Mitchell Trubisky is the starter. Kenny Pickett is going to have to knock him out of that starter position. I kind of give that a little bit of a side eye. Jeff, where are you on how this quarterback situation plays out?
Mitchell Trubisky's base salary this year is just over $1 million. That should tell us something right out of the gate. I know people throw out whatever the $26 million overall for the 2 years, but his base salary is $1 million. They drafted a quarterback in the first round. What do we need? I mean, okay, Pickett is third on the depth chart. Guess what? It's mandatory minicamp, and he's a rookie. Of course he's third on the depth chart right now. Let's see what happens in the middle of August. Seriously, before we go any further here. So I really don't think if Trubisky starts any games, it's in September. But ultimately, I regardless of what people are saying now, it looks like it will be Pickett's job much sooner rather than later.
I'm with you. I would put the odds. He's the week 1 starter. I don't think it's out there of like, I would say 90%. It's a lock. I could see a game or two, as you just said, maybe Trubisky just holds him off just a little bit. And then you kind of play that whole situation from Justin Fields last year and other quarterbacks we've seen before where it's like, wait the first 2 games, get him back on the road, then he comes back home and whatever reason they want to come behind it. So let's go to wide receiver because that's who they're going to be throwing to. So you know my feelings. I'll recap for anybody that didn't listen to that show at the time. Maybe you haven't just tuning in, finding Jeff and myself. What it comes down to, Diontae Johnson. I believe in his volume. I believe he's one of the best wide receivers, route running, getting open wise. So I'm not concerned about Diontae. What it comes down to is I think they drafted the better wide receiver, and Claypool announced it, which I feel bad for Claypool, but I believe Pickens is the better wide receiver than Chase Claypool. And I believe he ended up in the best spot possible for somebody who has the off-the-field issues, which are personality and, having locker room, get fired up, being too cocky in himself. There was a wide receiver that used to play for the Steelers that was pretty much that. I'm not calling Pickens Antonio Brown, one, personality-wise, but let's not put him that far. And I'm not calling George Pickens Antonio Brown talent-wise. But I am saying Pickens is the number 2 over Chase Claypool. Of course, he could fail as any rookie can, but that's why I'm completely off Claypool this year. Where are you on Pickens and Claypool, Jeff?
2 tropes. I did think of the trope from earlier, by the way. It's receiver X is working on third down passing game work, and it was for Ramondre Stevenson. We call that an Adrian Peterson right there. And then the other one, and this applies to Claypool, is receiver X is moving around the formation or, whatever. So that's Claypool right now, which is usually not a good sign for said receiver. I'm with you. The consistency is going to be maddening. Sure, maybe he'll have a big game or two in an offseason where it looked like he was really tracking towards being that number 2 receiver for this team. And maybe if somehow they moved on from Johnson after this contract is up this year, being the number 1, 2, they drafted a guy who has first round talent. And yes, a little bit of off the field concerns in Pickens. I mean, I'm with you. I don't want shares. I see that in our chat here. I don't want shares of Claypool. I do want shares of Diontae Johnson. We're getting a discount on Johnson right now, which is great. And I'll take Pickens. I'll take him more in dynasty leagues for right now because of the uncertainty at quarterback. But I do like the long-term career arc for him.
Okay, so the final spot to talk about on this team is tight end. And so in my breakout column, I always reference rookies because I don't consider them breakouts because they haven't done anything in the NFL, which that goes against. I'm not saying they can't be great players as rookies because that's another trope. They've never played in the NFL. Every rookie in the history of football never played in the NFL. So throw that out. But I say that because what's to break out on as a rookie? Like we're using breakout, at least in my definition, is that you're breaking out off of what you've done in the NFL. So Freiermuth already last year, I don't think he can move much further in front. So he's 10-13 last year. The problem is similar to the Tyler Higbee situation. I love Freiermuth. Like, let's make that clear if you didn't watch this show at all last year. I gave him Air Fryer because I like Air Freiermuth. The point being is I can't see him getting past those 80 range targets again because he would need about 100 to make a significant jump over tight end 13. Now, can he finish tight end 11? Sure. That's not a breakout to me. Do you think that Freiermuth could be the number 3, or do you think he's kind of stuck similar to Higbee is in like that 80 target range?
Yeah, sadly, I guess I do think he is stuck there. It comes down to touchdown efficiency. If this guy is 70, 80 target guy and scores 2 touchdowns, we know what people are going to say. He sucks and blah, blah, blah. And if he scores 8 touchdowns, he probably will be he'll definitely be a top 10 guy. It might even be a top 6 guy at that point, even with that volume. So he really isn't on my radar. If I was going to draft a later tight end, I'm going to go for a much higher ceiling, like a David Njoku, or heck, like last round. Why not Evan Ingram? Let's just see, because I obviously don't care about tight end. I wouldn't be grabbing Freiermuth there, but I agree. I think he's awesome. Last year was a really good rookie season, and that is a notoriously tricky position to perform well early in your career.
100%. My favorite late round is Irv Smith.
Big Irv. Yeah.
There is, if you want to read the article, there is one in Houston. I think it's getting way overlooked, but we're not talking Houston. We're talking, let's find out.
Eagles. No.
Oh my God.
It is.
It's the Eagles.
It is. It's listening. You hear me,
turning this off.
Bezos?
I'm going to turn this off.
That's crazy.
Oh, what the hell, man. All right, we're talking Eagles here. It's throwing me off. I don't even know. I'm so thrown off by this. All right, you know what? I'll start at quarterback, Jeff, because we just talked about this on the Athletic podcast. And I referenced, this is good. I'm glad we're talking about projections. So I'm not saying this because you'll see I made the mistake. So the MVP season from Lamar Jackson, I ran my projections. Lamar Jackson checked in as number 2. And I said, whoa, my projections are aggressive. Let me tweak some numbers manually and come back on him. And I dropped him down to QB7 because I was like, I just, and what happened? Number 1 that year. Again, I'm not saying that to laud the projections. I'm saying that to set up this. I ran my projections this year, Jeff. The number 2 quarterback is Jalen Hurts. I don't think people realize he was over 60% on completion percentage last year. I don't think people are giving enough account to the fact that adding A.J. Brown ticks everybody down the depth chart. Devontae Smith is now the number 2. Jalen Reagor or Quez Watkins or whoever it might be, because he got beat out by Quez Watkins last year, is now the number 3, who's technically the number 4, actually the 5 behind Dallas Goedert and the backfield. And the biggest part about it is Jalen Hurts was QB9 last year, throwing for miserable numbers because of the running. Can he be top 5? Is two out of the equation? I'm not going to say is 2 is too aggressive. Is 2 out of the equation in Jeff Ratcliffe's mind?
No. And I mean, so the nice thing about him right out of the gate is the rushing ability, as you said. You have Lamar. This isn't hyperbolic. Lamar is the greatest rushing quarterback in the history of the NFL already. Like,
yes.
There's no doubt in my mind. Like, yes, Michael Vick was great. Lamar is better. Hurts may be the second best rushing quarterback in the NFL right now. And I only say that because Kyler can't stay healthy. Because Kyler is obviously electric there as well. Last year led all quarterbacks in rushing yards. He wouldn't if Lamar would have stayed healthy, but still he did it. So you have the floor of 40, 50, 60 rushing yards a week, a touchdown every other game. That's massive. Then you add into that equation A.J. Brown. Now, this is not going to be a pass-first team. This is going to be a run-heavy team. They were very run-heavy under Shane Steichen last year, and it's going to be basically the same thing this year. But you add A.J. Brown, like, that's huge. The problem, Jake, I was really hoping that it would be like Jalen Hurts, quarterback 10, quarterback 11 in ADP. Best ball ADP right now has him at quarterback 6. And why I bring up best ball right now, we're not really talking for a best ball audience per se, but usually it's a great measuring stick in June as to what our ADP in redraft is going to be like in August. It's never perfect, but you're probably not getting any discount on him. Definitely within the range of possibility. I mean, you'd have to figure, Josh Allen has a very strong chance of repeating again. Mahomes, if he can put it together, will be in the mix, but Hurts has that massive ceiling. And the Lamar comparison. Now, Lamar's historic year was because of 36 passing touchdowns, not because of the rushing. I mean, that helped. But you add A.J. Brown's a touchdown maker. Some of these guys just have that, and he does have it. Add that to the mix. As you said, now Smith doesn't have to worry about being the alpha. He can be the complementary number 2, which probably he might be better suited for. Maybe Jalen Reagor gives you something. Dallas Goedert gives you plenty. I'm looking forward to seeing Gainwell take a step forward in year 2, and Boston Scott is still there, and it's exciting for Hurts for sure.
Gainwell was my 5th and my deep running back breakout for this year.
I like it.
I'm in on Gainwell for you. To give you everybody an idea real quick, barely over 4,000 yards for Jalen Hurts, 27 passing touchdowns, which might sound aggressive, and maybe that's the big difference right there. But almost 800 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. 810, so still in that same range. Obviously, if he seeds more of those touchdown goal line carries, you can see how quickly Hurts can go sideways. So while we bring this up, and as Jeff just said, QB6, you're not getting a discount. There's no way I'm taking him as QB 2 or 3 because, again, that range. And so it comes down to that discount not being there. So let's talk about Kenneth Gainwell in this backfield. The reason I like Gainwell is because I think people don't realize that he has the ability to carry the ball. He's not going to be only a pure pass catcher, but the pass catching upside is what I like. And what we've seen from this mix is that they've given up on Miles Sanders being the guy. They still throw balls to Miles Sanders, but they've kind of given up on that being that 3-down option where I could see 150 to 200 total touches for Kenneth Gainwell, obviously more situational in the passing game, but a nice mix of that 100 carries, 60 to 70 receptions. And right there, you put all the numbers there, and I broke it down in the column, is you're talking about a top 30 running back. Am I saying to take him as a top 30 back? No. But you're talking about somebody who could put up that J.D. McKissick season from like 2 years ago. Like, I think Kenneth Gainwell is one of my favorite mid to late round running backs to take right now.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, 60, 70 catches is massive if you're getting up in that range, but is it within the range of possibility talking what we talked about earlier? Yeah, it is. Like that's like a peak career Theo Riddick or Duke Johnson or Giovanni Bernard, like all those guys. And each one of those guys at various points, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there were stretches where they were solid flex options because of that heavy volume in the passing game, or flex plus, let's even call them. As far as Sanders is concerned, I mean, the writing was on the wall for this when an Indianapolis coaching staff came over, right? They run, this guy is our early down, this guy is our satellite passing down back, and then we'll have a third guy in the mix as well, which the third guy, of course, being Boston Scott, who they re-upped on. Sanders, I don't think it can get much worse from an efficiency standpoint, obviously, from last year. Like, I mean, efficiency from the touchdown, like, yeah, it was fine in terms of his yards per carry. It's just, you don't score any touchdowns. It's brutal. He knows that, though, and he has the chip on his shoulder, and he's been saying some of those trope things as well, like, this is my year or whatever he's been saying. But here's the interesting thing about Sanders. So I went through on my SiriusXM show, if you were to punt your second running back, so say you draft a top 10 running back, either a first or second round, and then you just go after wide receiver until the middle rounds, round 6, 7, 8. Sanders is going in that range in best ball. So legitimately, do I like Sanders? No, I don't. But do I like Sanders in the 7th round? Yes, I really do, in fact. So that he's going to be a really interesting player if that ADP sticks for him.
Okay. All right. So let's move to wide receiver then. And we keep bringing up A.J. Brown. So let's talk A.J. Brown, because before the trade, there was a lot of projections, a lot of sites, a lot of rankings, whatever it might be. They were talking A.J. Brown top 5. A.J. Brown, he's back with the Titans, all the volume, all the terrific talent of A.J. Brown. Gets traded, and everybody's like, well, Jalen Hurts can't throw the ball. This team's going to suck. A.J. Brown's going to suck. I've seen him go as far down as 15th. I've seen some people still have him, very few, around 6. Where does Jeff Ratcliffe settle in on A.J. Brown? And I know he's going to be in a tier, so maybe talked about like what kind of names you would put him with this year.
Okay. Right now I have him at 10, but I do think that's the start of that tier, right? Okay. Because the bottom of the like post, I guess you'd almost have to say post Devontae Adams. Maybe Devontae Adams is the top of that tier, but it's like Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans. So A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Diontae Johnson, I have in that category. Those types of guys. Keenan Allen is in that category, but I don't. Yep. They're different types of players, obviously. So yeah, that's the range, and I do think he's at the top end of that. From a volume standpoint, he should be just fine. I mean, we talk about Goddard, we talk about Smith. I'm not worried about Rager getting tons of targets. Now, if Gainwell does what you say, though, that does take some of the volume out of the overall passing game, which could be problematic. But I'm really banking on that touchdown ability, which is something the Eagles really, outside of Goddard, maybe they didn't have on the team last year. They didn't have a guy you can just put in the red zone because he's a monster of a human being and he's going to body up and make plays. Like Howie Roseman compared him to Anquan Bolden. I think that's a great comp, by the way. And they knew Anquan Bolden well from having to face him all those years.
Yeah, I like that as well. I mean, for what we're talking about here, A.J. Brown and my projections almost at 9 touchdowns on 1,100 yards to kind of give you an idea. For me, now to go back, I don't have Kenneth Gainwell for 67 receptions. Mine checked in at 47.
Yeah,
so
that's a good number. Yeah.
But I have this offense very concentrated to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, and nobody else on this team outside of Gainwell in the backfield. So no other wide receivers or tight ends. Nobody else even has 20 receptions. Now, I know somebody might get into the 20s, but this isn't out of the go look at other teams. This has happened before. You can go look at the Chiefs when you talk about Kelsey and Hill and then the backfield, and then the next closest wide receiver was 23 receptions. So this can happen. It's not common, but it can. So I want to ask you that, Jeff, because right now I have Devonta Smith as very close to the target share of A.J. Brown at 70 receptions, Dallas Goedert at 64 receptions, and then the fall-off is from there. So that puts Devonta Smith right around wide receiver 30 for me. Dallas Goedert is a top 10, unless you have any takes on that. That's not surprising to anybody. No. But Devonta Smith towards the end of last year started to fall off a little bit. Rookie wall, whatever narrative you want to, there's a cliche for you. Anything you want to throw out there, maybe miscast as a true number one. What is your take on Devonta Smith? Is 30 basically going to be wrong because it's too high or too low? Or do you have something you've seen where you feel confident about what Devonta Smith is going to be in 2022?
Well, I think that complimentary piece, and that's really why the team did what they did. And I mean, shout out to that organization for acknowledging, Howie Roseman in that same interview did say, we weren't confident in our abilities. Like he said, even the best drafters will hit 60% of the time in the first round. So they went out and got somebody proven. I thought that was a great move right there. Now, as far as Smith is concerned, I'm so much lower than you. I am at 33. So
you hate him.
I absolutely hate him. I think that's a great range to put him, though, because what we're acknowledging is in wide receiver 3 range, does he have the capability to be a top 10 guy? No, but to be a top 24 guy, sure, it could happen. That's within the range of outcomes. He could also be wide receiver 48 at the end of the season if things don't exactly pan out. So there's definitely more boom or bust potential there. A lot of that's going to go as Jalen Hurts goes. But you're at least drafting for a ceiling with him as compared to, maybe, let's see who else is in the same range. Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? I don't think you're getting anywhere near the ceiling with St. Brown, maybe a higher floor, but I really want to go after those ceilings in fantasy drafts.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We'll spin this one more time after we get out of here. I whispered a team to see if it'll work to get it to go. It went Jets. I whispered the Titans because we talked about the Titans 3 times. It didn't work. We got the Jets, unfortunately. But fortunately, we can save the Jets for another day. That actually has a lot to talk about, interestingly enough. But interestingly enough, you should also be following Jeff at Jeff Ratcliffe on the SiriusXM show at FTN. Code ALLIN, get you 20% off. theathletic.com/betstv gets you your first free month. You can check out my series. Jeff is going to enjoy some more travels. He'll be out at FSGA and then back in a few weeks, 2 or 3, I don't know, somewhere around
Something
there.
like that.
Somewhere around there. And with that beautiful wallpaper, thankfully gone. So we'll see you guys next time.